Shalom, shalom, and welcome to part 4 of the 2016 Pesach special. So now what we're going to do is go into the readings for the second day of Pesach, which begins with our Torah reading from Leviticus 22:26 through 23:44 with appropriate linguistics. So let's get into that right now. Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "When an ox or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall stay 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day on it shall be acceptable as an offering by fire unto Yahweh. However, no animal from the herd or from the flock shall be slaughtered on the same day with its young. When you sacrifice a thanksgiving offering unto Yahweh, sacrifice it so that it may be acceptable in your favor. It shall be eaten on the same day, and you shall not leave any of it until morning. I am Yahweh. You shall faithfully observe my commandments. I am Yahweh. You shall not profane my set-apart name." And you do that, by the way, by being disobedient, right? "That I may be sanctified in the midst of the Israelite people. I, Yahweh, who sanctify you." So the ritual doesn't sanctify you. The sacrifice doesn't sanctify you. Doing a little happy dance doesn't sanctify you. I sanctify you when you obey. I who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your mighty one. I, Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say unto them, These are my appointed times, the appointed times of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim as sacred occasions." Now, who is he speaking to? Moshe. Moshe is a Levite. So we were talking about this with Joshua, with the Joshua teaching. The Levites and the priests proclaim the Moedim, the fixed occasions. Starting with this one. On the 6 days, work may be done, but on the 7th day, there shall be a Shabbat of complete rest, a set-apart occasion. You shall do no work, and it shall be a Shabbat of Yahweh throughout your settlements. Now, let's see. I'll get to that later. Shabbat has two meanings: day of rest and the number 7 or 7th. But notice this, that it is the day of rest that is the original meaning, and the resting day was named. The number 7 was named after the rest. Not after the resting day, not the resting day named after the number 7. Okay? You shall do no work. It shall be a Shabbat of Yahweh throughout your settlements. These are the set times, the appointed times of Yahweh, the sacred occasions on which you shall celebrate at its appointed time. In the first month, on the 14th of the month, at twilight, there shall be a Pesach offering of Yahweh, and on the 15th day of that month is Yahweh's feast of unleavened bread. Whose feast is it? It's Yahweh's feast of unleavened bread. Not the Jewish feast of unleavened bread. Not the Hebrew feast of unleavened bread. Not the Israelite, Ephraimite, or any other ite. Yahweh's feast of unleavened bread. And you shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days. On the first day, you shall celebrate a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. Now, here's the thing. If you're late in the afternoon on the 14th, and now the sun has set, a new day has begun, that means the 15th. And that's what it says. And on the 15th day of that month is Yahweh's Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Boom. 7 days you shall make offerings by fire to Yahweh. 7th shall be a set-apart occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say this to them. When you enter the land that I am giving you, and you reap its harvest, and you bring the first sheaf of the harvest to the priest, he shall elevate that sheaf before Yahweh for acceptance on your behalf, and the priest shall elevate it on the day after the annual Shabbat." That's how I translate that. It doesn't say annual or high, but remember there's more than one kind of Sabbath. We'll get to that in the linguistics. Okay. On that day, you elevate the sheaf. You shall offer as a burnt offering to Yahweh a lamb of the first year without blemish. The meal offering with it shall be 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, mixed in. An offering by fire, a pleasing aroma unto Yahweh. And the libation with it shall be of wine, 1/4 of a hin. Until that very day, until you have brought the offering of your Elohim, you will eat no bread or parched grain. Remember we were reading in Joshua 5? It said that they ate the parched grain. They cannot eat that before, well, it would have been the 16th. See? It is a law for all time throughout the ages in all your settlements. And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after, again, it's the day after the 15th, which is an annual, day after the high Shabbat, the day after the annual Shabbat. In my translation, to avoid this type of circularity, I call it a Shabbat convocation. The day after the Shabbat convocation, which I think just clears that whole thing up. You shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. They must be tamim. We'll get into the linguistics why that word is very important. You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you will bring an offering of new grain to Yahweh. You shall bring from your settlements 2 loaves of bread as an elevation offering. Each shall be made of 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, baked after leavening. That's first fruits of Yahweh. With the bread you will present as burnt offerings unto Yahweh 7 yearling lambs without blemish. 1 bull of the herd, 2 rams with their meal offerings and libations, an offering by fire, a pleasing aroma unto Yahweh. Okay? You shall also offer 1 he-goat as a sin offering, 2 yearling lambs as a sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall elevate these, the 2 lambs together, with the bread of the first fruits as an elevation offering before Yahweh, and they shall be set apart unto Yahweh. For the priest. On that same day you shall hold a celebration. It will be a sacred occasion for you. You shall not work at your occupations. This is a law for all time in your settlements. It is a Shabbat convocation, in other words. And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field or gather gleanings of your harvest. You will leave them for the poor and the stranger. I, Yahweh, am your Elohim. Yahweh then spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the Israelite people thus. In the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall observe a complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts. Yom Teruah, right? You shall not work at your occupations. You shall not bring in an offering by fire to Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Mark the 10th day of this 7th month is the day of atonement, Yom HaKippurim. And it shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall practice self-denial, and you shall bring an offering by fire unto Yahweh. You shall do no work throughout that day, for it is a day of atonement, on which expiation is made on your behalf for Yahweh your Elohim. Indeed, any person who does not practice self-denial, means fasting, by the way. Yes, of course, it does. Throughout that day shall be cut off from his kin. Now, some folks will say, Andrew, it doesn't specifically say fast. It simply says, you will afflict your souls or yourselves. You afflict your soul by weakening your body through fasting. That's how you afflict it. The proof of that, by the way, is in Zechariah, where he talks about the fast of the 7th month, and he uses the term zom, which only means fast. Same word used for Yom Kippur in the Aramaic New Testament. Zoma de Yehudaya. Okay. Whoever does any work throughout that day will cause that person to perish from among his people. Do no work whatever. It is a law for all time, throughout the ages, in your settlements. It shall be a Shabbat of complete rest for you, and you practice self-denial on the 9th day of the month at the evening. From evening to evening, You will observe this, your Shabbat. So the Shabbat is actually beginning a little bit on the 9th. And the fast begins towards the end of the 9th day. And that is one of two set apart occasions that do not begin immediately after sunset on the previous day. And of course the other one is Pesach. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, say to the Israelite people, on the 15th day of the 7th month there will be the Feast of Booths to Yahweh to last 7 days. The first day will be a set apart occasion, a Shabbat convocation. You will not work at your occupations. 7 days you will bring offerings by fire unto Yahweh, and on the 8th day you will observe a Shabbat convocation, a sacred occasion, to bring an offering by fire unto Yahweh. It is a solemn gathering. You shall not work at your occupations. Those are the set times of Yahweh that you will celebrate as sacred occasions, bringing offerings by fire unto Yahweh, burnt offerings, meal offerings, sacrifices, and libations. On each day, what is proper to it, apart from the Shabbats of Yahweh, and apart from your gifts, and from all your voluntary offerings, and from all your freewill offerings that you give to Yahweh. Mark on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the yield from your land. You will observe the festival of Yahweh to last 7 days, a complete rest on the first day, and a complete rest on the 8th day. On the first day you shall take the product of hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, willows of the brook, and you will rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim 7 days. You shall observe it as a festival of Yahweh for 7 days in the year. You will observe it in the 7th month as a law for all time, throughout the ages. You will live in booths 7 days. All the citizens of Israel shall live in booths, in order that future generations may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I, Yahweh, your Elohim. So Moshe declared to the Israelites the set times of Yahweh. Okay, so just to go over some of the cool vocabulary throughout that extended reading. Shabbat, Shabbaton, 23:1, a Shabbat of Shabbats. So it's an extra, like Shabbat on steroids, basically. Double amplifier. Moedim, 23 verse 4, it means to meet as well as appointed times. At the appointed times, Father Yahweh will be with you. That's his appointment with you. The creator of the universe will see you now. Have a seat. Mimocharat HaShabbat, the morrow after the Shabbat. It is important to note that the word Yom, day, does not appear in the text in 23 verse 11, nor does the word morning in the sense of dawn, boker, sunrise, shachrit. It does not appear here. And there's a reason for this. The Hebrew day runs sunset to sunset, and therefore the Hebrew day includes the sunrise part as the last half of the day. So there is a morning that is attached to the Hebrew day. But if you have this word machar, morrow, depending upon the time of day, it could be referring to the dawn on the following Hebrew day. So in other words, this Hebrew day has to end, and then the following morning is the machar. Okay? In terms of the timing of Shavuot, those who think it must always be after the weekly Shabbat seem to not emphasize enough the fact that a phrase like this only becomes necessary because the day of the Shavuot, the 50th day of the Omer count, floats throughout the week, year after year after year. Bearing in mind that the Torah gives us very specific days for the Moedim, the 14th day for Pesach, the 10th for Yom Kippur, the 15th for Sukkot, it seems highly unlikely that Shavuot would always be Sunday if the text doesn't say, what if it meant that Shavuot could only be on Sunday, why not just say, and on the first day of the week following the Pesach is is the start of the Omer count. Why not just say that? But they don't. Moshe doesn't, because he knows the day's float. His it floats. And that's why we also have that word tamim. The weeks must be complete. Why add this instruction? if you're going to be fixed to counting from Sunday to Saturday, and your week counts, Sunday to Saturday normally, you don't need to have, your weeks would automatically be complete. You don't need to say it must be complete, which implies it might not be, but for that instruction. Therefore, it floats. Therefore, the Omer count begins on the 16th. Okay. V'lechem v'chali v'charmel lo tochlu e'aretzem chayom hazeh ad haviachem et korban elechem. Until the day you bring the sacrifice to your Elohim, you may not eat the bread, roasted grain, or fresh grain. That also proves, when looking at Joshua 5, as we've already mentioned, that the Omer count starts on the 16th. Okay? I'm going to actually skip over that explanation since I already gave it. 23 verse 16. Ad mimocharat hashabat hashaveit tisparuch hamashim yom vehikravatem mincha chadasha Yahweh. Until the morning day after the 7th week, there'll be a total of 50 days. On that day, you may now present new grain as an offering unto Yahweh. So the Israelites are eating the old grain up until this time, and old bread after Pesach. But then at the conclusion of the Omer count on the 50th day, they can finally eat the new stuff. Mikra, 23 verse 21, convocation, time to call out Abba Yahweh, a time to convoke, to assemble, right? Mikra is also used for the Torah text, or the called out text, set apart text. The rabbis will say, read the Mikra, the Torah text, twice, and the Targum, or the Aramaic interpretation, once. 23 verse 21, we've got two words, avodah and melaka. Avodah means to work as a servant, do menial work. Melaka, address the payment you get because you did that work. Melaka work will vary depending upon what you do to make a living. So whatever you do on the 6 days, like Isaiah says, turn your foot away from it, right, on the 7th day, if it is a profit-making activity, right? Ana, to bow down, as a metaphor for fasting, and so on, okay? So, and one other word, Ezrach, native born, related to the word for seed. Ezrach, zera is the Hebrew word for seed, means one who came up from our soil. Now, if you're in synagogue on the 2nd day of Pesach, you will then read Numbers 28, 16 through 25. But we already read it, so I'm not reading it a second time. And this brings us to the Torah reading that we would have on the Shabbat in the middle of Pesach. That is from Exodus 33:12 through 34, verse 26. So Exodus 33:12 is where we're starting from, to 34:26. Okay, which is right about here. I have a little bit of mayim. All right. Moshe said to Yahweh, "See, you say to me, lead this people forward. But you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, I pray," it's the most famous, one of the most famous words, "let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor." And later it'll be, "Let me know your ways, that I may behold your glory," right? And he said, "I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden." And he said to him, "Unless you go in the head, do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor? Unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth." This is right after, of course, the wake of the golden calf, right? And Yahweh said unto Moshe, I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor. I have singled you out by name. He said, Oh, let me behold your presence. And Yahweh answered, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you, the name Yahweh, and the grace I grant, and the compassion that I show. But, Yahweh said, you cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live. And Yahweh said, See, there is a place near me. Station yourself on that rock. And as my presence passes you by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will shield you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. And Yahweh said to Moshe, Carve 2 tablets of stone, like the first, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Be ready by morning, and in the morning come up to Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me, on the top of the mountain. No one else shall come up with you, and no one else shall be seen anywhere on the mountain. Neither shall the flocks and the herds graze at the foot of this mountain. So Moshe carved 2 tablets of stone, like the first ones. And early in the morning he went up to Mount Sinai, as Yahweh had commanded him, taking the 2 stone tablets with him. Yahweh came down in a cloud. He stood there, and he proclaimed the name of Yahweh. And Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, a mighty one, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. Yet he does not remit all punishment, but visits the iniquity of the parents upon the children and the children's children, upon the 3rd and 4th generations. Moshe hastened to bow low to the ground in homage, and said, If I have gained your favor, O Adonai, I pray, let Adonai go in our midst, even though this is a stiff-necked people. Pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your own. Yahweh said, I hereby make a covenant. Before all your people I will work such wonders as have not been wrought in all the earth or in any nation. And all the people who are with you shall see how awesome are Yahweh's deeds, which I will perform before you. Mark well what I command you this day. I will drive out before you the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Beware of making a covenant with the inhabitants of this land against which you are advancing, lest they become a snare in your midst. No, you must tear down their altars and smash their pillars and cut down their sacred posts, for you must not worship any other Elohim, because Yahweh, whose name is jealous, is a jealous Elohim. You must not make a covenant with the inhabitants of this land, for they will lust after their gods and sacrifice to their gods and invite you, and you will eat of their sacrifices. Why? Because it's also free love, which isn't really free. When the pagans come, they bring their girls. The girls come, they basically say to the Israelites, let's have a good time. Let's go to bed. And in return for that, they are said to have wedded to their pagan god. Right? Now let's face it. Life in the wilderness is hard. Okay? You're wondering where your next meal's coming from. It's dry. It's dirty. It's a hard scrabble existence. And now all of a sudden, the circus comes to town. You're going to want to go to the circus, aren't you? Most people will. And that's the danger. They will ensnare you. You will eat of their sacrifices. And when you take wives from among their daughters for your sons, their daughters will lust after their gods, and will cause your sons to lust after their gods. Paganism was popular. Paganism is defined as what 99% of the population of the planet was doing. And there are reasons why they were doing it. They got money, they got sex, they got drunk, they got everything that they wanted. And they got to be called righteous while doing it. You shall not make molten gods for yourselves. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, eating unleavened bread for 7 days as I have commanded you, at the set time in the month of Abib. For in the month of Abib you went forth from Egypt. Every first issue of the womb is mine, from all your livestock that dropped a male as firstling, whether cattle or sheep. But the firstling of a donkey you will redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck. And you must redeem every firstborn among your sons. No one shall appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall work. But the 7th day you will cease from your labor. You shall cease from labor even at plowing time and harvest time. You're taking that day off. I don't care if you got to get the crops out. Trust me. It'll be fine. You shall observe the Feast of Weeks, the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of the Ingathering at the turn of the year, at the fall equinox. 3 times a year shall all your males appear before your sovereign master, before the King, Yahweh, Elohim of Israel. I will drive out the nations from your path and enlarge your territory. No one will covet your land when you go out to appear before Yahweh your Elohim 3 times a year. You will not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, and the sacrifice of the feast of the Pesach shall not be left lying until morning. The choice of first fruits of your land and your soil you shall bring into the house of Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall not boil a goat in the milk of its mother. Okay. Now, just go over a couple of things. Maybe a little more than a couple. Okay. Vayamar panav yalechu v'hinachoti lach. My presence will go before you. That's instead of the messenger, who was Yeshua, who was going before them in Exodus 23. Vayamer har'anina et kavodecha. And Moshe said, let me have a vision of your glory. But kavod also means to be heavy or to give weight to. It is kavod that is honor your father and your mother in the 5th commandment there. Meaning give weight to what they are saying. Pay attention when they are speaking. Right? But remember, as Yahweh says, Lirot et panai kilo yirani ha'adam v'chai. You cannot, as man, have a full vision of my face and live. 33:19 also has the interesting phrase, I will make my goodness pass before you, as if to say, if you really see me, you can only see goodness, because I am perfect. There is no imperfection. There is no badness in me. 34 verse 1, Vayomer Yahweh el Moshe, Solecha shenelucha avanim, charishonim, v'chartalfi, al halachot et hadevarim, asher chachu, al halachot harishonim, asher shabarta. Yahweh said to Moshe, carve out 2 tablets for yourself, just like the first ones. I will write on those tablets the same words that were on the first tablets that you broke. The rabbis teach that was on the 1st of Elul, and then 40 days, 40 nights later, it's Yom Kippur when Moshe comes down. That's their opinion. That's Yom Kippur. All right. Vayered Yahweh ba'anan vayit yatsev imosham vayikrav Hashem Yahweh. Yahweh descended in the cloud and stood with Moshe, and he, Moshe, proclaimed the name of Yahweh. Now, Father Yah had initially descended on the 3rd of Sivan in the year of Exodus to all of Israel. Now Father Yahweh is just doing this for Moshe, because Israel messed up, right? And Moshe is worshiping him by calling his real name. And I think that the rest of this is fairly self-explanatory. We've got, I believe, quite a bit of readings to go. And so let's go into Exodus 13:17 through 15:26. And there's not going to be any linguistics for this. Exodus 13:17 through 15:26. So just go to that. And I think that I will conclude this part after this particular reading, even though we've got more to go. Okay, 13:17. Here we are. Next page. Now when Pharaoh had let the people go, Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although it was nearer. For Elohim said, the people may have a change of heart when they see war and return to Egypt. So Elohim led the people round about by way of the wilderness of the Sea of Reeds. Now the Israelites went up armed out of the land of Egypt, and Moshe took with him the bones of Joseph, who had exacted an oath from the children of Israel, saying, Elohim will be sure to take notice of you, then you will carry up my bones from here with you. So they set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And Yahweh went before them in a pillar of cloud by day to guide them along their way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. And Yahweh said to Moshe, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp before Pi Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, before Baal Zephon. These references relate to the area of Suez. Okay? So their crossing point to the Sea of Reeds is in the north, at Suez. That's why it's important that Baal Zephon is the Lord of the north. It's not the Lord of the south. I mean, if you look on a map, you look at the two possible crossing points of the Sea of Reeds. The Gulf of Suez is north. The Gulf of Aqaba is much, much further southeast of their location. There is no such place as Baal Zephon going anywhere near the Gulf of Aqaba or across Nuweiba Beach or into Saudi Arabia. Okay? Okay, between Migdol and the sea, before Baal Zephon, you shall encamp facing it by the sea. Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they are astray in the land, the wilderness has shut them in. Then I will stiffen Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, that I may gain glory through Pharaoh and all of his hosts. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh. And they did so. All right. And when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his courtiers had a change of heart about the people and said, what is this we have done, releasing Israel from our service? He ordered his chariot and took his men with him. They took 600 of his picked chariots and the rest of the chariots of Egypt with officers in all of them. Yahweh stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he gave chase to the Israelites. And the Israelites were departing in defiance. And the Egyptians gave chase to them, and all their chariot horses of Pharaoh, his horsemen, and his warriors overtook them and encamped by the sea near Pi Hahiroth before Baal Zephon. Okay? As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. Greatly frightened, the Israelites cried out to Yahweh, and they said to Moshe, was it for lack of graves in Egypt that you brought us here to die in the wilderness? Oh boy, that's the classic rebel line. Sometimes the bad guys get all the cool lines, right? Here's the thing about this moment. When we're reading in the text, doesn't it seem like this is happening very fast? Right? That Pharaoh is like, I don't believe I did that, and just boom, goes out right away. I don't see this happening more than a couple of days after Exodus itself. And so I did a lot of fancy schmancy calculations. I'll spare you the details. And I came up with this date when the Israelites crossed the Sea of Reeds. And it is on the 18th day of Abib. So it only takes them 3 days to get to that part of Suez City. Right? What is now Suez City, and cross. And if you look on a map, it's very doable. Now, here's the interesting part. The 18th day of Abib is also the Hebrew day that Yeshua rose from the dead. It makes sense that the Sea of Reeds crossing is within Passover week, within the Feast of Unleavened Bread, doesn't it? And here it is, the same day that Yeshua is, our salvation is risen from the dead, is this day that the Israelites get salvation against Pharaoh. I don't think that's a coincidence. Is this not the very thing, these rebels continued, that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us be, and we will serve the Egyptians, for it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness? But Moshe said to the people, have no fear. Stand still and witness the Yeshua of Yahweh that he will accomplish for you this day. The salvation deliverance, the Yeshua of Yahweh. Right? Yahweh will battle for you, and you are going to hold your peace, which is a nice way of saying, be quiet and watch and learn something. Then Yahweh said to Moshe, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. And you lift up your rod and you hold it out your arm across the sea and just split it, Moshe. Just do it. So that the Israelites may march into the sea on dry ground. Now this is important. For the people who are looking for scientific explanations for everything, this thing called wind set down, which I've looked at, which, at the right geographic location, with the wind blowing 8 to 10 hours that night, and under just the right conditions atmospherically, very rarely the sea could split. But here's the funny part. Moshe doesn't know he's going to part the Sea of Reeds until that very moment. So how could Moshe plan to be in the right place at the right time, getting updates from the Weather Channel on his tablet or whatever? No. He simply went where Father Yah told him, and then Father Yah said, you know what, enough of this, just do it. And I will stiffen the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all of his warriors. Let the chariots and his horsemen, let the Egyptians know that I am Yahweh. When I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen, the messenger of Elohim who had been going ahead of the Israelite army, Yeshua, now moved and followed behind them. The pillar of cloud shifted from in front of them and took up a place behind them. And it came between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. Thus there was a cloud with the darkness, and it cast a spell upon the night, so that the one could not come near the other all through the night. And then Moshe held out his arm over the sea, and Yahweh drove back the sea with a strong east wind all that night, and turned the sea into dry ground. The waters were split, and the Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Notice it says wall. Not liquidy, wall. It congealed. Another miracle that cannot be explained by science. Egyptians came in pursuit after them into the sea, and all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen. At the morning watch, Yahweh looked down upon the Egyptian army from a pillar of fire and cloud. He drew the Egyptian army into panic. He locked the wheels of their chariots, so they moved forward with difficulty. Right? And the Egyptians said, let us flee from the Israelites, for Yahweh is fighting for them against Egypt. Then Yahweh said to Moshe, hold out your arm over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, and upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. Moshe held out his arm over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal state. The waters turned back. The Egyptians fled at the approach, but Yahweh hurled the Egyptians into the sea. The waters turned back, covered the chariots and the horsemen, Pharaoh's entire army that followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. And again, doesn't it make sense that even this part of the story would be during Pesach week, and on the very day that Yeshua rose from the dead? The Israelites had marched through the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and their left, and thus Yahweh delivered Israel that day from the Egyptians. Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea, And when Israel saw the wondrous power which Yahweh had wielded against the Egyptians, the people feared Yahweh. They had faith in Yahweh and in his servant, Moshe. And then for chapter 15, well, they sing a beautiful song. Let's just say that. And then after they sing that beautiful song, they set out from the Sea of Reeds and they come to a place called Elim, where there are 70 palm trees and 12 springs of water. There's a beautiful math code in that, but I will save that for another time. But for me, the highlight of 15 is the song of Moshe, right, which is Ashir al Yahweh Kiga Olga'ah. I will sing unto Yahweh for his great victory. Sus verochavo ramavayam. The horse and the rider he has thrown into the sea. Ozi vezimrat Yah. My strength and my song is Yah. Not Yahweh here. Yah. This proves that Yah and Yahweh are interchangeable. Yah is the short form of his name. Vayahi le Yeshua. And he has become my salvation, my Yeshua. Ze ele ve'anvehu. This is my El, and I will praise him. Elohi aveva aromenhu. The El of my fathers, and I will Raman. I will exalt him. Yahweh ish milchama Yahweh shemo. Yahweh is a man of war, and Yahweh is his name. Michamocha ba'elim Yahweh, who is like unto you among the mighty ones, O Yahweh. Michamocha ba'elim Yahweh. Michamocha neder ba'kodesh. Who is like you, Yahweh, there is no one else. Mikamoka El is where then you get the name Michael. Also, the messenger Daniel says Michael is the protector of Israel. It's the only Hebrew name I'm aware of that it is a question rather than a statement. Who is like unto to you? And at this particular point, we do have some other reading scheduled, but I'm going to actually end part 4 here. And we will pick up part 5 with the discussion of Deuteronomy 16. We'll do some Haftorah and continue on from there. And so that is going to be in part 5. And in part 6, we're going to get into some fun stuff about locating Mount Sinai. So that's what's coming up. Take care. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you in part 5.